How to handle difficult accents and overcome language barriers in virtual teams. My name is Peter Ivanov, and in this video I'll give you 10 tips to effectively overcome accents and language barriers in remote or virtual teams. Have you been on a phone conference when your Indian colleague starts speaking up and you struggle to understand? He's a great guy, you had a great time last time at the team retreat at the bar, but when he becomes passionate and emotional and starts speaking quickly, you struggle to understand. And not just you. The more global your team, the more cultures and accents involved, the more likely this scenario to happen. What is the cost of this accents and language barriers? It starts maybe with, it may sound initially funny or amusing. It may go to the level of being irritating and reducing the productivity of your call, up to reaching the level where you may have a brilliant expert who, due to language barrier, is not contributing up to the level he is capable of. So the cost could be really impacting your team performance. Let me give you 10 tips structured in 3 groups. The first group is, if you are a non-native speaker, what can you do in order, to speak up and overcome this? The second group is, if you are a native speaker or a leader, how can you encourage and make sure people with language barriers speak up and get understood? And the third group is, how can we use technology and tools in order to facilitate the process? So if you're a non-native speaker, the first tip I have for you is, if you have a question, before speaking up, put it in writing. Put it in writing, think about it. It may get answered. Wait a little bit, so it may get answered as the discussion unfolds. If not, before you speak up, put it in the chat and press the send button. And then start explaining to the team members. So they'll have a chance to see what you speak and understand everyone, and then you get a response. Second tip for you, ask for clarification. It takes courage to overcome the same barrier, same language barrier, but we know that the high-performing teams, the number one trait, which was the outcome of the Google project Aristotle, they researched 180 of their teams. What are the common traits of the teams which are performing at the highest level? And the number one trait is psychological safety. So allow for people to make mistakes, to take risks, and still be comfortable. So if your leader is instilling this culture, great. Even if not, ask for clarification. It's okay to ask. Now let's see, if you are a leader or a native speaker, what can you do to help solving the problem? First tip for you is, speak slowly and clearly. And make sure you gesticulate in the way in order to emphasize the words in your message. Use less words and more pictures. If you have a chance, prepare a presentation and put pictures, and pick the funny ones, the one that brings laugh and emotional response, which highlight and emphasize your message. Be aware of jargons and avoid idioms. So speak simple language in a slow and clear way. Next, 2 tips in 1. Repeat and summarize. So every time you reach a decision, every time you reach an agreement and conclusion, repeat it, summarize it, and repeat it to the team. It brings a lot of clarity. And the next tip is, if you have somebody in the team, and each team has somebody who can type quickly and who could express himself succinctly, ask him to summarize. Every time you reach a decision or a common agreement, summarize it, put it in writing in the chat, and make it visible for everyone to avoid any misunderstanding. Next tip, regularly check for understanding. So it's not given that people understand. Somebody may be speeding up and so on. Regularly check for understanding. Next tip, make sure everyone contributes. Again, same Google strategy, Project Aristotle. The high-performing teams, the other common trait in the high-performing teams, everyone is having a fair share of the talking. Not just the extroverts dominate, not just the native speakers. Everyone, the experts and non-native speakers, they have a fair slot of talking. So you as a leader have to ensure this. How can you do that? Ask people to contribute. If somebody is not speaking up, if he hasn't given his opinion, ask him. And if he contributes, he or she will praise their contribution. Again, they have overcome something in order to speak up and give their thoughts. Praise them for that in a good way. That's why how we create this culture of being okay to be vulnerable, being okay to make mistakes. And the last tips for the leaders: sometimes you need to put the people in the right emotional state in order to contribute, to be comfortable, to contribute to the discussion. So how can you do that? Discuss on a so-called meta level. Discuss on the feelings which people have in this particular situation. Refer to the common team goal. It's always, running them in the right direction. Refer to the team's why. So you put them in the right emotional state and they'll be more willing to contribute and overcome their barriers. Let's see now what are the tools and technology. 2 tips there. First, use the chat wisely. How? We said the non-native speaker could put their questions on the chat. You as a manager or your so-called support team member can summarize and put in the chat all the decisions, all the agreements. You could put even the agenda up front in the chat and the decisions to be made. And the second tip, and the last, use multiple communication channels. For example, if you have a one-on-one telephone call with your boss, when you finish the conversation, summarize the points discussed, summarize the decision to avoid any misunderstanding. This could be done by the leader as well, by the way. It's not necessarily the responsibility of the employee. Or as a leader, you call a meeting, send the agenda in advance, send the decisions to be made in advance. So your non-native speaker will have a chance to make up their minds, and not just them, and be able to contribute and to phrase their questions and their point of view. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. Or if you have questions or would like to share how it works for you, please feel free to put it in the comments. Leading multinational teams with multiple cultures and multiple accents is a blessing. So I hope with these teams you will be able to have the accents of your team members as a spice that makes your team conference experience unique and enjoyable, and you could overcome the language barriers, so each of your team members will be performing to their highest potential. Big virtual power hack from me, Peter Ivanov, and I see you next time.